Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to train when you have no equipment at all. No gym, no friends, no family, no one to love you, no one to whisper sweet nothings in your ear as you fall asleep. That got creepy. So, if you don't have anywhere or with anything to train, no dumbbells, no barbell, no stretchy bands, definitely no gym, what can you do? What should you do to put together a decent approach to training that can get you some kind of results? A few things. Before we get into the numbered tips, cardio is obviously still possible. So if you don't have anywhere to train, you can still jog. You can do all kinds of parkour if you want. Cardio is, you can definitely take walks, you can hike. So cardio is absolutely on the table, no problem at all. But what about resistance training? What are you supposed to do if you have zero weights? How do you train with resistance training? Well, it turns out that there are tons of exercises that you can do that require no equipment at all, or something that you don't think typically of as equipment, but you will still use as equipment. For example, you can do, with no equipment at all, just really a floor, you can do push-ups. You can do push-ups which are closer in grip, and your hands stay closer to your head, and you end up doing them called tricep push-ups. They're like skull crushers, except for the push-up variation. You can get two chairs together and do dips in between them with your feet out on the front on the floor. The chair dips are very popular. Crunches, body weight squats. You can do lunges with your body weight. You can do sissy squats, where you squat staying on your tippy toes and you touch your knees all the way down to the ground and then come back up. You can do split squats. You can do single leg squats if you're really advanced and very strong. You can do calf raises on any staircase that you have around, or even some kind of ledge or curb with a stick for balance. It's that easy. So that takes care of a ton of leg exercises and a ton of pushing exercises. But what about anything for the back of the body? What about the pulling stuff? Well, all you need is a tree with quite a few large branches relatively low to the ground. Look around for trees, you're sure to find one of them somewhere. And then you can do all sorts of pulling. You can do pull-ups. You can ratchet your feet down lower and do face pulls, pulling the bar to your face to hit your delts and your biceps and your traps. You can do inverted rows on the lower branches to hit the rest of your back. You can even do inverted curls. You position yourself just under a tree branch, you grab it underhand, and depending on where you put your feet, it's going to allow you to leverage. You can do almost no gravity at all, and you'll be able to curl your body into the branch, thus doing an inverted curl. That takes care of a large fraction of your body pretty damn well. Not ideally, not optimally, but way better than you thought. Well, I don't have any equipment. That means I can do zero exercises. Oh, you can do a ton. Now, what you may be thinking at this point is saying, okay, great, that you've listed all the exercises, and certainly there are a few more. But what if I run through all these? I mean, I got like 1 month or 2 of training, a mesocycle. I deload. Ideally, I want to switch some exercises out, but there's nowhere to go. Like, you don't have any equipment. You just push up as a push-up. But that's not true. So that's point number 3. By modifying your foot and hand positions, you can create new exercise variations that you can feed into your program so that you don't have to get super bored training with no equipment. Squats can be narrow stance, medium stance, or wide stance. Push-ups can be narrow, medium, or wide. You can put your feet up on a chair for push-ups and all of a sudden do decline push-ups, which are really, really hard, and hit your front delts and triceps a little bit more than they hit your chest. There's a ton of ways in which to put your feet and hands into different places, including with pulls, pull-ups, wide, medium grip, narrow, underhand. All kinds of options for you, even if you have the bare essentials of the ground and a tree. And if you cannot get access to a tree, I'm sorry, but a tree is required for part of this, or at least something you can hang on to that's at chest to eye level. And then if that's good enough, you can do rows off of it, you can do pull-ups off of it, etc. The way you do the variations is this. You pick a variation at a time. You say, okay, I'm going to do push-ups, chair dips, I'm going to do bodyweight squats, lunges, some rows and some pull-ups, and that'll be a good exercise for me, a good exercise routine. Stick to one kind of grip for all those. Those are wide grip push-ups, let's say. Those are wide stance squats, wide pull-ups. The theme is wide, randomly. After those exercises, a few months later, get a little stale and you want to switch it up, switch over to medium grip for a lot of the stuff, or narrow grip, or underhand, or whatever it is. So continue to use the variations as long as they feel good and you're making progress on them. And as soon as they sort of sputter to a stop, you can then switch. That way, if you have 3 variations, wide, narrow, medium, even if you use one of them per month, that means you don't see the next one until 3 months later, which is usually long enough time for your body to feel real fresh about it. But typically it takes 2 or 3 months for you to really run out of steam on a variation, which means when you come back to wide stance squats, it could be 6 months or longer after you last did them. And they're really going to feel different. They're going to feel new. They're going to feel fresh. And you're not going to feel encumbered by this total lack of variation in your program, which sucks, right? That's what you solve with a gym. You have tons of toys to play with, and just a tree and the ground is just not a lot of stuff to do, not a lot of variation. Next, question number 4. What do we do about progression? Because this is a tough one. In the gym with weights, progression is almost implied. You just lift more weight. But in a situation where you're lifting your own body weight, mostly outside or in an enclosed room with a tree in it, interesting perspective on that, how exactly are you supposed to progress? Well, got a couple of hints for you. First of all, you can add reps. Let's say you're getting really close to failure for sets of 12 in the push-up. Over time, seek to go to 13, 14, 15, 16. If you can do sets of 16 in the push-ups, everything being equal, after you were able to do sets of 12 at most, you got more muscular and stronger and healthier. Typically, we say don't go over 30 repetitions because anything much lighter than that isn't optimal. But with workouts at home or workouts on the go with 0 equipment, optimal is pushed aside a little bit and possible is fronted as the variable that is best. And if it grows some decent amount of muscle for us or it makes us healthier in some other way, we'll take it. So what I would say, if you're training at home, try to make your lifts challenging enough by leveraging your body against yourself in such a way that you can do less than 30 reps of them per set. But potentially you'll have to go up to 50 repetitions per set, and that's totally fine because it still has muscle growth potential. And for those of you folks in your first 2 or 3 years of training, it has a lot of muscle growth potential. So adding reps is great. And now we know you can add up to as many reps as would make 50 reps for an exercise. The thing is, 50 strict, good, high quality push-ups is something almost nobody can do. And almost everyone that says they can do it, you actually watch them try to do it and you're like, that is the worst technique I've ever seen. That's all half reps. You're bouncing off the ground. You're not locking out your elbows. Do real push-ups and they're like, oh, I got 27. And you're like, exactly. So even if you're in really great shape, just adding sets and reps to push-ups, to pull-ups, to bodyweight squats, adding repetitions can go up for a long time. And if you can really do 50 reps of those movements, a lot of times you're in unbelievable shape and it's kind of like mission accomplished. Another way to take what I just said is this. If you think you're in too good of shape to get some beneficial effect from working out with no equipment, you're probably wrong. And you probably can challenge yourself even with no equipment at all. Here's another way to challenge yourself. Reduce the rest time. Typically you would do a bunch of push-ups and you would stop and rest for 2 or 3 minutes. But now, because you can't put weight on your back for push-ups or you can't do the bench press, it just has to be push-ups at home or push-ups on an outdoor setting where it's just the ground, you might rest for 1 minute or even 30 seconds, or even as soon as you get your breathing back relatively to normal, then you go again. That repeated challenge to the muscles greatly sums up how much metabolites are in the muscles, the byproducts of their efforts, and those byproducts have been linked to hypertrophy improvements, to muscle growth. So if you can challenge yourself with rest times, shrinking them on the margins a little bit every time you come in for, let's say, a month or 2, that's going to take a workout where you do seemingly the same number of reps and make it way, way, way harder, giving you more of a muscle growth stimulus, which is really, really good. Another thing to try is myo reps. Instead of resting 2 to 3 minutes between sets, have some exercises in which you do 20 reps of bodyweight squats, close to failure. It was really challenging. You rest for another 5 or 10 seconds and you go again, maybe hitting 5 to 7 reps a few times over and over with minimal rest. That can fry you up in the best way possible, causing a lot of growth stimulus. At the gym, when you go train, you may only need 2 to 4 sets of heavy resistance, barbells and dumbbells and machines in order to drive home a muscle growth stimulus. That's cool. It's really good. That's why we go lift weights, because they make a challenge for us in a small amount of time. However, when you're training by yourself with no gym at all, you may have to do more sets. You might have to do 4, 5, or 6 sets eventually at the end of your program, potentially in a shortened rest time scenario, because each set isn't heavy enough to drive the best adaptations for you to get as much muscle as you can. But we add more sets, constrain the time, we end up working just as hard, except we do more sets and reps and less weight. It takes the same amount of time as we do at the gym, but you cram more work into that, and thus you are able to get a very similar, comparable response in muscle growth training. So someone can train at home and say, well, yeah, I did 6 sets of bodyweight squats and it really got my legs sore. Somebody training at the gym could have done 3 sets and got their legs just as sore and get them to grow just as much. So there's not really a solution with this added sets recommendation. It is a solution in some sense, but it's going to require you to do more work. You guys can kind of see where this is going through adding reps, through decreasing rest time, through introducing things like Maya reps, through adding sets. We're making the stimulus harder, because making it hard on your body is how you make progress. Another really quick question you can ask yourself theoretically before you start trying to put together a program that has no equipment to access. You can really ask yourself the question of, how do I make the lack of equipment hard on my muscles? Because that's what's going to get them to grow, and it's going to get you to lose body fat and get stronger and all those great things. Another thing you can do is to decrease the mechanical advantage that you're experiencing. If you're really strong in your squats from a completely flat foot, you're using your glutes, your adductors, your quads, then you're doing more than sets of 50. That's not really doing anything for you anymore. What you can do is try some sissy squats. Sissy squats essentially push your hips forward and your knees have to touch down gently on the ground all the time. That creates a crap load of mechanical disadvantage for your quads, takes your glutes mostly out of the equation, and all of a sudden, as far as quads is concerned, that's a mechanically disadvantageous lift. It's harder for the quads. That's a good thing, because as the quads try really hard, they struggle, and that's when they grow. So a lot of times you want to ask yourself the question of, how can I make this exercise more difficult on myself, put myself in a position in which I can't lift as much weight so that I have to try harder to lift the weight that I have, because the weight is your body weight. It's constant. Another one is single leg squats. Does take some balance to do, and you can't hold onto a chair to do them. But if you figure out that balance, you get something to hold on to, it's a really tough exercise. All of a sudden, you're very challenged. And the mechanical disadvantage there is you took one entire leg out of the equation. Stuff like that can really, really, really help you. Point number 5, and the last point for this video, the critical factors to making gains inside the gym or out are as follows. And these are mostly tuned for outside the gym with no equipment. You want to make sure you check a couple boxes. 1, you want to get close to failure often in the same workout. With heavy weights, getting close to failure for 1 set of hack squats in the machine in the gym, that might be a really good stimulus. But with your body weight, you might have to do 3, 4, 5, or 6 attempts at something, sets, in succession, in which each one of those gets you close to failure. Then you're going to have a hell of a pump in your quads, a hell of a burn, and you're going to know you did something. We have to repeat the stimulus more often because we have less load. Easy fact to understand. Next one is to take limited rest time. If your lungs are good to go, if you're not breathing heavy anymore, you're ready to do your next set. That'll save you time in your workouts. It'll also hit the muscles in a fatigued state, making things more challenging for them, thus driving up their metabolites that they produce and probably driving up muscle growth as well. If you're in a position where you're doing 2 or 3 sets of something and you're like, man, I wish I had a gym, I could really hit my back better, try 3, 4, 5, or 6 sets, slowly working up over time in that manner for your back training. And you may find that, well, with just body weight, inverted rows, and pull-ups, 2, 3 sets like I do with the machines at heavy weight at the gym, they don't do much. But 4 or 5 sets, man, they really do light me up, and that's providing great growth. So don't be afraid to add some volume. You can recover from it because the loading isn't that insane. You'll be totally good to go. Lastly, just to think about this, try to go in there and make things tough for your muscles. Make your muscles try really hard. Make them have to slow down during their movement. You know that last set of bench press or last rep where you're really slowing down to push it? You should take your push-ups and your tricep extensions and your pull-ups so far in your training that they start to grind. And if you can get your muscles to grind, you can probably get them to grow. Folks, if I can be of any more help, please check out the comments below. Ask a few questions. I'll try to answer them. I'll see you next time. Training for muscle growth
is never going to be the same.